Mm,
Mm.
150.
Welcome
Oh
to
my God.
Welcome to Dream Idiots, episode 150. I'm Morris. The guy who's incredulous in the background is Brian. Each week we tell each other stories and bring you along for the ride. Brian, what do you have for us?
Just more of the same. I can't believe this is 150. We've been doing this for quite a while. So thanks for tagging along with us for these many months. And now I guess we started very first part of
I
22.
don't remember.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
remember. I have no
Since
idea.
COVID, my ability to keep track of time is non-existent. I know that I'm somewhere between the ages of 20 and 100, but beyond that I couldn't tell you. Thanks for tagging along with us yet again. We appreciate it. Listening, subscribing, sharing our stuff. If you want to go online and give us a review on whichever platform you're listening to us on, that would be great. You can actually check out the website, dreamidiots.com. Made a bunch of changes there. We have a little bios on Morris and I there. The merch store is now embedded in the website as well. And there's more content there as well. And we're going to be flushing that out and adding more stuff to it all the time. And really, that's about it as far as just business. But we appreciate all that you're doing for us, and we've got lots to come. I've got my next 10 story ideas at least mapped out. So I haven't done any work on them yet, but I'm getting ahead for the summer. And
Speaking of the summer,
go ahead.
I'm wearing a Hawaiian flower t-shirt.
Aloha. Are you
Aloha. No, that is awesome. And the website is really something we kind of work on when we're not reading or working on stories and getting things ready. So it's coming along, and Brian's handling all that. So I just send him things occasionally, but it is looking good and it's looking, might I say, professional. So
well,
at
we're,
least
we're
that's my opinion.
we're fostering the illusion that we know what we're doing. Right.
I believe you
Uh,
said you had an update for us. Is that correct?
One story update I just came across. We're actually recording this episode the day before it drops. So we're recording this on Memorial Day. This just came across my basically my news feed on my laptop, and I only clicked on it because I recognized the picture way back. I think in March of last year. I told the stories, episode 112, titled "A Violent Man." I told the story of a guy named Grant Hardin.
Right, right.
So Grant is the dude from, he was in Arkansas. He was in law enforcement. He was terrible at law enforcement. Was fired from multiple jobs in Eureka Springs and one other town. He tried on more than one occasion, I think, to run for public office, run for mayor or something of some little podunk piece of shit little town in Arkansas. No offense, Arkansas. Um, and then just randomly one day he was out driving around, pulled up next to a car that was sitting on the side of the road, pulled out a gun and shot the driver of this car who was just sitting there eating a sandwich or something in his
Right.
car. The man he shot was a guy named 59-year-old James Appleton. So Grant Hardin is arrested. He's tried. He's convicted. Convicted of, I think, first degree murder, sentenced to 30 years in prison. As part of that process, they run his DNA, match his DNA to a 20-year-old unsolved rape case. A woman who's a teacher was
Right.
prepping.
Okay, I remember this now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like a in-service workday for the teachers.
It was just before the
Yeah,
school year,
that's
so
right.
this
Yeah, yeah,
teacher
yeah.
is on campus on a Sunday morning prior to the school year. There's like 250 people on campus because this school rents out their cafeteria for some local, presumably crazy right wing church to have church services there because they need a facility. So there are a ton of people on campus, even though it's a Sunday. He rapes this poor woman, gets away with it, but because of the DNA from the murder, he's convicted of both, and he's sent away for 30 years. This came to me from an article on khou.com. And it begins Grant Hardin, a 56-year-old inmate and former police chief, is on the run after
Oh
escaping
shit.
the after escaping the North Central Unit at Calico Rock, according to the Arkansas Department of Corrections. Arkansas State Police and ADC reported that Hardin escaped through the Sally Port, is the kind of the secured entrance, the airlock kind
Hmm.
of entrance of the prison, wearing what appeared to be an officer uniform. at around 3:40 p.m. Sometime this is yesterday. This is Sunday, the 25th. The Department of Correction has since confirmed the uniform he was wearing was makeshift and likely designed to look like either a prison uniform or a cop uniform. Whatever. It's construction
Mhm.
paper or whatever the fuck. Paper mache. He made it up. Anyway, this fucker got out. So law enforcement is, of course, telling everyone to keep an eye out for this dude. He's ugly as sin. He's weighs 280 pounds and is bald, so it looks like Jabba the Hutt. Um, if you get a chance, by all means, hit him with your car. But so this
Dream Idiots
dude,
does not condone hitting anyone with their cars.
so
That was hyperbole
this
on
this
my co-host's part.
this dude is out. Yeah, so be careful. Just saying. And
Yeah,
by the
and
way, the Department of Corrections in Arkansas, you have one job. One job.
The Sally port too. That's where you give up your guns, right? If you're going in as like a police officer. And anyway, okay.
So hopefully he's caught quickly and doesn't do anything stupid, but he probably will.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you for that horrifying update. Um, be on the lookout for him at Sonic's, Dairy Queens.
All you can eat buffets.
Bryan, are you ready for my story?
I'm ready.
This is episode 150. Bryan, my interest in this episode's subject began as I read about an actor named William Atherton. Are you familiar with William Atherton? Let's start with him.
I am.
You know the name.
I do know who William
Okay.
Atherton is. I know exactly who he is. Yep.
Okay.
I'm not gonna...
He was born in Orange, Connecticut on July 30th, 1947. He studied drama at Carnegie Mellon and graduated in 1969. Good school, Carnegie Mellon. He found work on Broadway with David Rabe. You might recognize the name David Rabe from Streamers, The Basic Training of Pablo Hummel, and Sticks and Bones, and a fellow by the name of Arthur Miller.
Sure.
I hear that kid's going to go somewhere someday, that Arthur Miller kid. Someone should give him a contract. Atherton's film career started in the early 70s, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I'm going to skip ahead to the 1980s. Between 1984 and 1990, over a span of 4 films, Atherton portrayed a trio of characters whose personalities are defined by their arrogance and self-importance. They are, short, officious pricks. And in one of those roles, he's ostensibly the good guy, but his range is far greater than that. He was, in my opinion, an overused term. He was typecast for a while. In 1984, he played an EPA official named Walter Peck. In 1985, he played a college physics professor named Jerry Hathaway. And in 1988 and 1990, he played Dick Thornburg, a television reporter. In all of these roles, his characters were pretty abrasive and unlikable. The films themselves are what I might call, or at least Rocky and Bullwinkle did, antihistamine movies. They're nothing to sneeze at. Ghostbusters from 1984, he played Walter Peck. Real Genius from 85, rest in peace, Val Kilmer, he played Jerry Hathaway. And in Die Hard and its sequel, Die Hard 2 in 88 and 90, he played reporter Dick Thornburg, who, spoiler, gets his clock cleaned by Bonnie Bedelia. So, Bryan, you have a picture of him in your head, I'm guessing.
Right.
I'll go and just send this to you, so we're all together there. I send it to you in your phone.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
On October 14th, 1981, that's the guy. On October 14th, 1981, Atherton appeared as an audience member in an episode of The Phil Donahue Show. Do you remember Phil Donahue?
Of course, yeah.
One of the most successful talk shows ever, kind of the template for talk shows. And he was a man lucky enough to have married Marlo Thomas. His show was locally produced in Dayton, Ohio from 1967 to 1970. It went into national syndication later that year in 1970, and often featured what we might call divisive socio-political issues. Donahue would act as a moderator between expert guests and a studio audience, but this was more thoughtful than what we might see in the later format, say from Jerry Springer or Morton Downey Jr. To me, it seemed at least that Donahue genuinely wanted to learn along with his audience, and he was kind and polite and just, good moderator. And the Phil Donahue Show, as I said, served as a template. See Jenny Jones, Sally Jess Raphael, Montel Williams, and even Oprah Winfrey claim Phil Donahue as kind of the exemplar. During his appearance on the Phil Donahue Show, Atherton gave no indication of his Hollywood career. Namely, that he'd already appeared in Steven Spielberg's 1974 theatrical film directing debut, Sugarland Express. You ever seen that?
I have not seen that, but I'm going to soon because it's part of a summer film series here in San Antonio. So it's going to be
Yeah,
screened here soon.
because it was filmed in Pleasanton, Floresville, San Antonio, all
Right.
through the area. That's right.
Right.
Atherton received fourth billing behind Goldie Hawn, Ben Johnson, and Michael Sachs. He appeared in one of my favorite films, John Schlesinger's Day of the Locusts in 1975, which I've talked about on the show before. He had third billing in that show, this time behind Donald Sutherland and Karen Black. That film is crammed with great performers. Burgess Meredith received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Geraldine Page is in it. Billy Barty is in it. Michael Dysart's in it. John Hillerman's in it. And very young Jackie Earle Haley is in it as well, in what I think
Oh,
was his second role. Um, it's an amazing film. 1977 saw Atherton with third billing, this time behind Diane Keaton and Tuesday Weld and Richard Brooks' Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Now these are more antihistamine movies in my opinion, with Locust and Goodbar being darker visions of darker visions from what I consider to be the greatest decade in American cinema, the 1970s. So Atherton was a known performer at the time, but most likely not a household name. In my opinion, for what it's worth, he's a damn fine actor. He's probably my top 10 favorite actors of any era. I think he's great
oh
in
wow.
whatever he does. He brings it in every performance, and I would call him an actor's actor, which is just about the highest compliment I can give. I think he's just tremendous in everything he does. You may not like him, but that's part of the job, right?
Right. Oh,
Because
sure.
his characters are often dickheads. On that particular day in 1981, however, Atherton was not in Phil Donahue's audience as an actor. He was there as a student, proponent, and representative of aesthetic realism, a philosophy founded by Eli Siegel. Atherton said that the school of aesthetic realism changed his life. I'll get into that specifics of that in a moment. But first, I want to describe the elements of aesthetic realism and what this philosophy, for lack of a better phrase, attempts to do. Let's start with the founder of aesthetic realism, the aforementioned poet and critic Eli Siegel. Siegel was born in 1902 in today what is known as Daugavpils, Latvia. At the time of his birth, the city was known as Dvinsk and still part of the Russian Empire. The Siegel family immigrated to the United States in 1905 and settled in Baltimore. Siegel attended Baltimore City College, where, according to the Aesthetic Realism website, he was a member of the highly regarded speech and debate team and contributor to the campus annual publication, The Green Bag, which, according to Wikipedia, is one of the first examples of a school yearbook. So that's kind
That
of
wow,
interesting.
that late? Okay. Okay.
In 1990, well, yeah, I mean, as we know them today. Um, and often you'll have a campus publication that appears like, at Roosevelt, we had, what was the name of that underground paper that would appear at the end of every year? Anyway,
I don't know.
I'm not sure that Siegel actually graduated from BCC. There's some conflicting information out there. Some sources say he attended, others say he graduated in 1919, which would make him 17 years old. But that might be from the prep school, because I think, as I understand it, Baltimore College is set up kind of like Incarnate Word in San Antonio, where there's a high school
Right.
feeding into the college as well. Um, and again, that's unclear. Amongst other BCC attendees are composer Philip Glass, who left there to pursue his work at University of Chicago.
I met him.
Writer, oh, you did really? Where at Trinity one time?
Mhm. Yeah. In yeah,
Um,
91 or two. Yeah.
Writer Leon Uris, Alger Hiss of the State Department, accused of being a Soviet spy in 1948. The late United States Representative Elijah Cummings is a product of BCC. The great
Hmm.
Elijah Cummings. And jazz musician Gary Bartz, who I watched perform here a few weeks ago at Club Dazzle here in Denver. Still kicking it, Mr. Bartz is. His performances are a thing of beauty. Siegel himself was a poet, and there are claims that he was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in poetry. But again, I could find no evidence for this. The Pulitzer website only goes back as far as 1980 in regards to nominees. And there seems to be lots of evidence that his most famous poem, Hot Afternoons Have Been in Montana, out of 4,000 submissions, won the Nation's Poetry Prize in 1925. That's the Nation magazine. Okay, so
Right. Okay.
he won their poetry prize. William Carlos Williams was apparently a big fan, and Siegel also holds the distinction as having written the shortest poem in the English language, which is also dated to 1925. The title is One Question, and the poem reads, I, why? Siegel lived in New York's Greenwich Village and often served as host for live poetry readings in the various coffee shops and bars in the neighborhood. Eventually, jazz music was added to the mix. That would be in the 30s. So very early jazz bandwagoner. He wrote a lot about jazz. He wrote poems about jazz. And I'm picturing the Jack Lemmon scene with the bongos from Bell, Book and Candle, which I don't think you've seen, or have you seen it, where Jack Lemmon is just
I've seen that
really,
scene. Yeah,
he's
yeah.
just hamming it up, and it's hilarious. All the while, Siegel was working on the philosophy that would become known as aesthetic realism, upon which he would routinely lecture in public fora. So wherever he could get a chance to talk about it, he would talk about aesthetic realism. Now, as I understand it, aesthetic realism's overarching thesis makes, quote, the attitude of the individual to the whole world the most critical thing in his life. I'm going to repeat that.
Say it again. Yeah.
The attitude of the individual to the whole world, the most critical thing in his life, is the most critical thing in his life.
Huh. Okay.
Okay. So we can break this down into three parts. And this is from Self and World, an Explanation of Aesthetic Realism by Eli Siegel. It was published posthumously in 1981. Three core elements of this. The first part is liking the world. Aesthetic realism believes that each human being genuinely wants to like the world of which they are a part and to see it honestly. And all of education should reflect this desire to like the world, okay, and see it honestly. Part two, the making one of opposites. The world is constructed of aesthetic opposites, and it is through the process of this understanding that we may make sense of opposites within ourselves. One must recognize that seemingly disparate conditions are one whole, magnets that both repel and attract, oceans that ebb and flow, and so on. Another way I think about it is like a child loves to create and destroy. They'll build up a tower of blocks and then they have almost as fun as tearing it down.
Right. Right.
To quote Siegel directly in this matter, the world, art, and self explain each other. Each is the aesthetic oneness of opposites.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so the two opposites, when they come together, are a new whole. All right. Part three, contempt. Contempt is the barrier to liking the world and thus liking oneself. It is contempt which prevents the individual from seeing the world as best they can, as honestly as they can. Contempt allows you to build yourself up only by tearing others or the world down.
Okay.
So, to be an ethical person within this framework, you have to be as fair to the world as you possibly can and try to see things honestly. Okay, so those are the three main components as I understand them. So, how does it sound so far to you, Bryan?
I like it, but I mean, some of the stuff. I mean, your background in academia, I think, some of the stuff is suits your brain more than it suits mine. My brain starts to hurt. I'd like it, but I'm like, it's like, dude, should we be high for this? I mean, I'm thinking I mostly agree. I mean, I'm not sure I understand it fully, but I'm mostly with it.
I in particular like the ideas of liking the world and contempt
Right.
because they themselves form an opposite. So that's kind of interesting. Now, here are what some concurrent artists, this is a book from 1971, had to say about aesthetic realism. They're taken from Aesthetic Realism, We Have Been There. Okay. Ted Van Griethuizen, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Ted Van Griethuizen, an actor and a teacher. In teaching acting, there are two questions I give as the basic approach to all characters. How is the character same as yourself? How is he different? One never gets away from this. All acting is going after the successful oneness of self and role as the same and different simultaneously. You become the role even as you remain apart from it. You've been an actor. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'd be curious to hear what like someone like Daniel Day-Lewis or any of those really extreme method actors would think about that.
Christian Bale,
Uh, Christian Bale.
yeah.
I think Sally Field it was kind of surprising to me. She apparently is a big method actor as well.
Dustin Hoffman, yeah.
Yeah. The shoot, I'm spacing on his name. Ethan Hawke big believer in those actors. As I understand it, I'm not in no way qualified to address it directly, but they're the ones who think that you learn the character and become the character by carrying what that character would have in their pockets. It's that
Mm.
whole really you have to imbue that own that role completely in order to ethically portray it.
Okay, yeah, and I think there's this sense that sometimes when you are performing, and I haven't been on a stage in a long time, but that there's a part of you that's watching what you're doing, that is separate from
So,
what you're actually
yeah,
doing on
right,
stage.
right. A part of you is always analyzing how it is coming off, how it's
Hmm.
being
Yeah,
perceived. Right, right,
and you're able to hold those two ideas in this that performer and you're able to hold those in your mind at the same time.
right.
Let's hear from a painter, Dorothy Koppelman. Dorothy Koppelman says this of aesthetic realism. When an artist wants to see what is hidden as well as what is apparent, he is ethical. He is doing what we all want to do. Have what we show be true to, include, be the same as what we are. When an artist finds differences within sameness, when he shows that energy is necessary for repose, that surface without depth is weak, he is ethical. When an artist shows that the opposites in reality can work together at the same time, in the same place, and for the same reason, he is ethical.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I like it.
Yeah, and light and dark,
Yeah.
the sacred to the
So,
profane.
surface and depth. Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
that one seems to. I hate the word resonate, but that was one like, yeah, yeah, I get. I agree with that notion. Yes.
let's hear from Lou Bernstein, who's a photographer. Every photograph is a statement by the person taking the picture about how he sees and feels the world and himself. Good photographs begin with an honest desire to know yourself.
Okay.
Also, I like to take pictures of pretty things.
Let's say that seems like a somewhat more of an overreach, but
Yeah. All right. So we've heard a little bit, and there's some good ideas in there. We've heard a little bit about what Siegel students say about aesthetic realism. Here's what they have to say about the man himself, about Siegel himself and his work. From Sheldon Kranz, who's a poet, and he was also the editor of the book that we're taking these quotes from. Siegel's work as a philosopher and a teacher of great power and originality is hardly known. His whole work presents America at its best. Now more than ever, it needs what he has to say. I had never heard of this aesthetic realism, Eli Siegel, till I read about it because I was reading about William Atherton.
oh well, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is
what a weird
I
weird series of dominoes falling.
I looked up in my sources here, and I have a number of sources on theory and practice and criticism. Of although I've probably looked at 15 books that I have, not a single one of them mentioned aesthetic realism and Eli Siegel. So yes, it's hardly known, I would say.
Right, right.
Let's hear from Anne Fielding, an actress. Eli Siegel knows the nature of self more truly than anyone in history.
Wow. That's certainly a grand statement. High praise.
Finally, let's hear from Martha Baird Siegel, who was his student, Eli Siegel's student, and then became his wife. Buckle up, Bryan. Eli Siegel could, with very little effort on his part, have become very famous. This was especially true when he won the Nation Poetry Prize for Hot Afternoons Have Been in Montana in 1925, but it was true later too. All he had to do was be a little more tactful, refrain from certain criticisms, not tread on certain toes, be a little more praising here and there. Eli's refusal to be part of this chain of flattery and contempt was his strength and his glory. It is why we loved and trusted him beyond anyone, and it also made him envied and hated.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I for one appreciate candor, but not everyone does.
Do any of these things sound familiar to you? The way they're framing Siegel in his work.
No, not. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. No, good. This is exactly how I wanted the story to go.
Okay.
So let's put a pin in this for a moment and return to the Phil Donahue show from October 14th, 1981.
I'd forgotten about Phil Donahue.
That's right. The guest experts for that episode were Alan Bell, PhD, and author of a book titled Sexual Preference, and Lawrence Hatterer, MD, psychiatrist at Cornell University. The two men, with Donahue fulfilling his role as moderator, interpreter of responses, tackle the issue of the day, which is, are gays born this way?
Hmm.
Which is also listed as the title of the episode. Yay, Internet Archives. In contrast to today's milieu, where opposing theories end in fistfights, the two psychiatrists engage in a professional manner, noting where they both agree and disagree. From what I could garner in watching, and I've watched this more than once, and I will probably watch it again, Bell was more on the nature side of the debate that homosexuality is indeed innate. You are born gay.
Right.
Hatterer takes a more of a social upbringing or nurture approach, although he does not rule out elements of the nature argument. Both the men agree on one point, at least as the episode depicts it, that people should not be forced to change their sexual identity if they don't want to. Hatterer says, and he receives an applause from the audience for this, it's a disservice to that human being to attempt to change them.
Right. Totally agree.
Yeah, I do too.
Sure.
But when it came to people who wanted to change from homosexual to heterosexual, Hatterer said, that's a whole nother story. Donahue then turns the microphone over to two men who claim that the study of Eli Siegel's aesthetic realism changed them from homosexual to heterosexual. One is named Mark Lale. The other is actor William Atherton.
Wow. Okay.
What Lale and Atherton said will be the subject of part 2 of this story, and I will give all sources at the end when I'm done. This is going to be 2, maybe 3 parts, because I'm still kind of fleshing it out.
Wow. Okay.
What do you think? Did you see that coming?
No, did not see that coming. Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I mean it's a really cool, incredibly interesting debate. My underlying debate whenever this has come up as a topic of conversation at any point during my life is like I don't really care what I mean in terms of being born gay or not. My argument has always been it's certainly interesting to have that debate, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. In my mind, I don't care which one it is. I mean, strongly suspect it is nature, more than nurture, probably, but it also doesn't matter. So, the only issue related to gay rights and some of these things that um, ethically perhaps I don't fully understand. I'm not judging it one way or the other. Is when there are medical treatments and procedures that are being performed on minors that I don't understand some of the legality of allowing a 12, 14, 16-year-old to undergo XYZ. And maybe there are lots of ethical questions there that I readily admit I don't fully understand, and maybe those things are best left to when they're 18 and they can really make those decisions on their own in terms of gender reassignment, gender affirming care and those types of things. But at the end of the day, I mean, people have the right to be who they are, so it doesn't really matter nature, nurture, who gives a shit. And it's always, of course, you and I agree on this completely politically. It's always these hardcore right wingers that are religious that think they're doing God's will that want to bring the hammer down and are the ones that are the most sadistic in their approach to dealing with these groups. They love you if you're if you're straight and white and you're in the bell curve, you're golden. But if you're anything besides that, there's always a problem, and there's always someone in this group wanting to step in and tell you how to be a better fill in the blank, or what's wrong with you because you're in one of these non-traditional outside the bell curve groups. Those people can fuck off. I mean, that's why I don't identify with so many people that look like us. It's always these straight fat white dudes who think they know everything. No, you don't know what it's like. What are you talking about? You have no idea. I readily admit that I have no idea. what it's like to be gay, straight, black, brown, trans. I don't know.
Hmm.
I try to be an ally. I'm incredibly supportive, but I don't know what it's like to be in that body. And so my ignorance means I keep my mouth shut. Um, it's interesting that, I mean, I would seriously have to go back and listen to this episode again and maybe even read some of the stuff that you've read to, I think, fully wrap my brain around what might be coming in episode two.
Um, what's coming is very interesting. I'll put it
Yeah.
that way.
Right. Okay.
And what I find, this is a 44-year-old television episode, but the audience was incredibly open-minded. It was really surprising to me because there's one guy I
Huh.
was like, "Oh, what's this guy going to say?" He says, "I don't care what you are or how you got there, as long as you're happy."
Right. Right.
Right? I mean, that is absolutely stunningly progressive for 1981. So,
Absolutely. Right.
yeah, I really have been fascinated by this subject for some time because I'm a big William Atherton fan, and I think he was really, really underappreciated in Day of the Locust. So basically, this is all John Schlesinger's fault for making a great film
Right.
in 1975, as to why we're talking about this. But as we go into the month of June, which is Pride Month, I would like to dedicate this story to my friends and family who are part of that community and celebrating Pride Month. I love you all, and we are here for you at Dream Idiots.
Absolutely.
So we will
And, go ahead. Sorry.
we will continue the story of aesthetic realism next time with part two.
And I think we can. We didn't ask for permission, but I think we that your message there should go out to friend of the pod Ross. I think because he's definitely part of the the Pride community here in Texas.
Yes,
So
and it's rough. It's
right,
rough these days. So go celebrate Pride Month with your friends and your family if you can. Even if you're not part of the LGBTQ community, go out there and celebrate and support them. All
right.
right. That's all I have for this week.
Excellent. That was incredibly interesting. My brain hurts, and your penchant for academic rigor is is clear. We clear once again.
Oh,
And and very and impressive. The fact that you have that ability. So thank you. That was super cool. I'm eager for part two. I feel a little bit bad because we're going to transition from that into a curse word.
that's fine. That's fine. Sure.
Okay. Curse word, 17th century word, and it's not dirty, but it seems like it might be. The word is twaddle basket. TWATTLE dash basket. BASKET. Twaddle basket. It's
Well,
actually incredibly benign.
I'm just gonna guess that it's either a person or a thing that you put nonsense items in, little mismatched things that you find, or someone who's absolutely full of shit.
The latter is probably closer. So it's a gossip. I mean, it can be just
Mm.
a gossip monger, someone who likes to share gossip, or really more accurately, it's just someone who just blathers. Someone just talks nonstop. I
Oh,
have
that's
a
what they were calling me in college. Okay.
I have a special aversion to folks who can't deal with silence and then who fill it with words, typically about themselves. And so I found that word and thought it was. It sounds disgusting. Then you realize, it's nothing. But
All these years, I thought people were calling me a twat biscuit. Now I know it's a twaddle basket. That's good to
there you
know.
go. Yeah. So, uh, all right, moving on
Yes.
to numero dos. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Um, Trying to figure out the best way to read this for you. We're going to Missouri
I know
this week.
Missouri.
This week for my story. So, going to talk about a young woman, Sharon Elizabeth Hall, was born November 30th, 1939, in Independence, Missouri. I'm always slightly fearful when I hear tales of people sort of born generally between the mid 20s to maybe the mid 50s, because in my mind, maybe this is not an accurate recollection, but whenever you hear tales of people born in this window, it seems like their tales are always rife with alcoholism and abuse. It seems like it was like it must have been much higher then than it is now. Everyone is wearing hats. Everyone is smoking like crazy, and everyone seems to drink in excess, every single day of their life. Three of my four grandparents were, I mean, all four of them were born slightly before this, but all four were alcoholics. Three of the four, excuse me. And it was just incredibly common, and maybe there was an effect of PTSD, soldiers coming home and needing something to do with their hands. I don't know, but anyway, Sharon is born in this window, and her childhood's kind of no exception. I don't think there's any physical or sexual abuse that I am aware of, or didn't come up in researching the story. But it's clear that her parents and really most of her relatives of the generation prior drank in excess and did exactly as they pleased, and they basically ignore Sharon and her brother Eugene. And her father was crazy. And when I say crazy, I mean literally crazy. People had forgotten his actual first name, and he was known as Crazy Hall. And Sharon was then soon known as Crazy Hall's crazy daughter.
Oh.
So not a great start. So James Kinney also lived in the area. He was the son of devout Mormons. His parents were parents were named Haggard, as in Merle Haggard,
Mhm.
Haggard and Katie Kinney. He graduated from high school in 1955, and he had come home for the summer after completing his first year at BYU in what city?
Provo.
Provo. So it's early summer 1956.
I spent a week
Weirdly,
there one night.
exactly. Apparently, there's not much going on.
Eh,
Uh, weirdly, this early summer of '56 is exactly the time that my parents got married. They were married June, I think, 16th, 1956. June 14th. I don't know. So James's parents encouraged him to go to a little get together, or ice cream social, or
sure.
whatever, at the Mormon church to meet some folks and get out of the house. So James is a little bit shy. He's 22 years old or so, 21. Uh, but he goes to this social, and he does spy an attractive young woman there who's blonde, and she's definitely getting the attention of the men and boys in the room. He's definitely interested as well, but he's also pretty shy.
She had
Uh,
him at blonde, Brian. She had him at blonde.
and at first, he can't seem to catch her eye. Plus, he speculates, yeah, she's probably too young for him anyway. Not that that usually stops Mormons. Um,
You said that, not me.
That's today's lawsuit. No. Uh, and eventually Sharon sees James as well. So, the 1956, she is 16 years old, but she looks a little bit older and certainly has the confidence of someone much older. The boys her own age really just bore her. Occasionally she has fun toying with them and happily accepts their attention if no one better is around, but she's definitely looking for something more substantial. She walks over to James. Now this probably shocks him just from the very beginning because in the 1950s, young women didn't walk across a room to a man. That just didn't ever happen. Boys always took the first step. So she's confident, but she's impatient. She's not going to wait for him to come over to her. She tells him that she's bored with high school boys because I'm older. She says that she's 20 years old and she had missed a year and a half of school because now she's basically playing catch up. James is thrilled to realize that she's not too young because she's 20, right?
Mhm.
But of course, he doesn't know that she's only 16. So in my mind, James is very much Marty McFly's father, as played by Crispin Glover in Back to the Future. That hopelessly awkward, stammering, unable to form a cohesive sentence. She's pretty. She knows what to do to draw the boys in. She probably twirls her hair a little bit. She may have tugged lightly on a button on her blouse or bitten her lip. So she's playing the role and she knows how to do it. Finally, again, because she's confident, but she's impatient. She says, "Well, I'm sorry you're so awkward around me, but perhaps next time I see you, we can put your stiffness to better use." She glances down at his crotch and then walks away. James eagerly tells his parents that he met a nice girl at the Mormon the Mormon social, and they assume that any girl at a church social had to be just the right type of girl for James.
Bryan, is this a real story or is this something that you've been writing?
100% or
Okay.
100%
All
a
right.
real
I'm just
story
checking
with no embellishment whatsoever.
because we're not that kind of podcast.
Right, right. So pretty soon, James and Sharon are dating and spending pretty much every waking hour together. James does have a summer job, and Sharon comes and has lunch with him nearly every day.
Is she a
Uh, th-
Latter-day Saint? I'm guessing not.
she is not. No, she
Okay.
later on she just has absolute scorn for the Mormons and James' religion. They reveal to each other that they are, that they're both virgins, but that quickly changes because they spend, their time when James is not working, basically hitting every lover's lane and out of the way park they can find all over the county. So they're getting busy, as the kids say.
Kids
So,
don't say that.
oh
Kids
well,
don't say
whatever. They did
that.
one point in time. So summer is drawing to a close, and James has to go back to Provo. So he heads back, and obviously he's missing her, and the feeling is mutual. After a short period of time, he does get a letter from Sharon, where she reveals that she's pregnant. So James actually kind of passes the letter around a little bit and shows it to a couple of friends, and at least one friend tells him, "Dude, this is a great big scam. She's not pregnant. This is horse shit. You shouldn't believe this." In the letter sharing the news, Sharon basically is saying to him, I don't blame you. I'm just letting you know this is going on. We had a fabulous summer. I have nothing but warm feelings for you. And I have no expectations, but I wanted you to know. So this is the 1950s, though, and James is
Mhm.
a Mormon, and he's going to do what's right. So he withdraws from school and heads back to Missouri, and he does the thing that he thinks he's supposed to, and they plan on getting married. The moment he's back in Independence, things now have changed. She's no longer sounding conciliatory. Now it's very much a sort of "you did this to me" sort of vibe, which from a legal standpoint, if he'd known her age, would be absolutely correct. But nevertheless, they go with James's father, Haggard, and they get a marriage license. When they go down to the courthouse to fill it in, Sharon fills in her portion of the paperwork second because she doesn't want James or Haggard to see what she has filled in. She doesn't put down her real birth date because that would be illegal because she's still
Mhm.
16. She doesn't put down that she's 20 either. She puts down that she's, I think, 17. I think 17 at the time was the minimum legal age to get married, but because she fills it in second and then hands it back to the clerk, no one no one sees this. Oh yeah, and by the way, now she tells James, "Oh, I want a big church wedding because I didn't have it last time." And James goes, "I'm
Last
sorry,
time.
I'm sorry, last time." She then reveals, "Oh yeah, well I was living in Washington State. That's why I have the year and a half gap in my education because I was married before. So the whole being a virgin thing that was a lie. And now I'm also a widow because my first husband died. So James is getting all kinds of interesting news. So but James can't offer her a big church wedding because she's not Mormon, A, and B, she's
Mhm.
pregnant. So that's not going to fly. They have a very modest little ceremony in the Kinney family living room, which basically pisses Sharon off to no end. She's incensed, offended, doesn't like James's parents, doesn't like the Mormon faith, thinks the whole thing is just a complete disaster. She now, very quickly in short order, is putting James down, mocking the fact that he's as close to his parents as he is, and just being insufferable in in many ways. James still is trying to be a good guy, wants to care for his family, even though it's going downhill quickly. In order to make more money, he moves over to the second shift, so he's basically gone working from about 3:30 p.m. to midnight daily.
Oof.
And oddly, for some reason, Sharon, even though she's fairly petite, isn't really showing any physical signs of being pregnant. So late one night after work, midnight, James comes home to find Sharon in absolute hysterics. She reveals that she had a miscarriage earlier in the day at their home. She's inconsolable, yelling, screaming, crying. He repeatedly asks, "Why didn't you call me at work? They would have. I mean, I would have come home, and I could have been here for you." She claims that she had tried him at work many, many times, but the operator refused to patch her through, and she was unable to get him on the phone. And it's about this time he likely noticed that she was doing that thing that sociopaths do when they're trying to foster the illusion that they are sad. It's the sobbing, quote unquote sobbing, while burying her face in her hands to hide the fact that that there are no
Not a
tears flowing. Right, bone
not a
dry.
tear in there.
Right.
Okay.
So, but she claims, there was blood all over the place, all over the clothes, all over the bathroom floor, and I flushed the fetus and wrapped up all the bloody clothes and threw them away. And now, as James is standing there in his house, there is absolutely no sign whatsoever that anything happened here at all, because there's no evidence of it to be found anywhere. James now probably fully realizes that he's being played. He knows he's the idiot, right? So, nevertheless, being the good dude that he is, he stays. But he does start complaining pretty often to his parents about his home life, and does start talking about divorce. But his parents advise against it. I mean, Mormons famously are not big fans of divorce, and so they actively encourage him to consider his faith and work through it. And if he wants to have a family, etc., that he needs to stay and work it out. So next step is, James basically decides, well, the goal now is we have to buy the house, the big family house.
Sure.
Because in the 50s, you buy the one big house and you stay there until you die. And he wants the big house because even though there's been
Because he wants to die.
even though there's been this miscarriage, he presumes there will be children and a family later on. And so, but in order to pay for the big house, James has to work even harder than he was. Even though Sharon does have a job of her own working in a camera shop, she has extremely expensive taste. And this is again a period of time in American history where you as a spouse could walk into any store, seemingly, and tell them what you wanted and buy it on account, and then basically say, just send my husband the bill. And this is what she did all the time. Clothes, furniture, housewares, whatever she wanted, all the time. And these bills would come and show up in the mail, and James would work feverishly to pay them off. Finally, she does become pregnant in reality and gave birth to a daughter, Dana, in 1958. A son named Troy follows shortly thereafter. But Sharon is pretty bored and really wants male attention, which is hard if her husband is gone from 3:30 to midnight every single day. So she is still working in the camera shop. She gets off around work around 4:30 p.m. most days, but it was very common that she would have some sort of emergency, causing her to be very late picking up the children from the babysitter. Around this time, she reconnected with a boy from high school named John Boldes, and was basically routinely having sex with him wherever they could meet, in cars, in hotels, wherever. For John, it was great. He didn't want a relationship. This woman already has another man's last name. She's not going to be coming to him looking for anything. So he's getting regular sex, and it's as far as he's concerned, it's a win. But she gets tired of having to catch up in cars or go to hotels. And because James is gone, John starts coming to the Kinney house after the kids are in bed, even
Sure.
routinely. So soon this wasn't enough. Sharon unloads John Boldes and randomly one night meets two men in a bar who are frequently in the Independence area because of a work contract that's going to last for a few months. She then spends those months having regular three-ways with these two men in hotels around town. I can only assume they were hoping the contract would be extended. So men find her easily in between the businessman and John Boldes. There are several other random hookups. So Sharon is living on the edge. She's on the precipice. She's dangling her toes over the precipice, over the edge.
So by now it's the early 60s.
It's no, tail end of 59.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
She's barely taking care of life at home. She never cooks any home meals. There are these newfangled TV meals that are all the new rage.
Mm-hmm.
So when James comes home, he finds his kids in dirty clothes, complains about nasty laundry, no cooked meals, And her response to his complaints is she hires a laundry service and then starts ordering pizzas to be delivered instead. And James is, of course, now hearing rumors. Neighbors know.
Pizza from Missouri in 1959.
Just dreadful, right? Awful in every respect. So, and James now, I mean, he's hearing the rumors, right? Neighbors noting all the cars coming and going from the Kinney driveway, delivering, picking up and delivering laundry, but bringing food. But and who's, just this parade of people coming in and out of the house. So James knew or must have known about other men. Finally, the businessmen are gone. Sharon goes back to John Boldes, who's, I'm sure, happy to get her phone call. She complains to him that James is now talking about divorce, and they're hammering out the terms of a divorce. James promises to give her the house and $1,000, which she claims is not enough. And now she is routinely dropping hints that just wouldn't it be great if James died? Wank, wank. Asking John to kill her husband. And John says, "No, I won't kill your husband. Are you fucking crazy? Of course not. What do you? No." And here's a hint: never call a crazy person crazy. They don't like it. And she's heard this basically her whole life. On one occasion, when Sharon and John are meeting up, he's literally about to get laid, and he relents and says, "Well, okay, I might know someone who might be willing to kill James, and I will call them next week." Okay, and he's like literally pulling his pants down, but just to get her to just to get her to stop. And she doesn't realize, I guess, that he's the men will lie in that situation. John, of course, does nothing. March 19th, 1960. Authorities are summoned to the Kinney household. EMTs, or whatever they were called in 1960, the EMT feels like it's a newer term, enter the master bedroom and find James Kinney on his back, thrashing his head back and forth. Blood is pouring out of a wound in the back of his head. He's moved to a gurney, and he dies en route to the hospital of a single bullet wound to his head. Various family members would tell authorities later that Dana, who is now just over 2 years old, was routinely allowed to play with James's .22 caliber handgun. Sharon says she heard from the next room her daughter asking about how to aim it, then heard one gunshot. Dana was asked to demonstrate. The police asked her to demonstrate how she would play with the gun, and she clearly shows that she was strong enough to hold it and aim it, and she was strong enough to pull the trigger.
And that's how she killed the police officer.
So James is dead. It's ruled accidental, but something about it just doesn't feel right to the police for obvious reasons. Sharon is now free. And she's just earned about $29,000 in life insurance money because she had just successfully murdered her husband and gotten away with it. The gun she had used to kill James, however, now was gone, still in the possession of the police, and she really wanted it back, but she knew she couldn't ask for it. So she doesn't. So what does a grieving widow do? She decides she really wants to buy a new car. Shortly after burying her husband, she drives his old Nash into the parking lot of a Ford dealership. She wants to buy a blue T-Bird. She's greeted at the door of the dealership by Walter Jones. Pretty much instantly, Walter is thrilled to see her because she seems like a great prospect. Salesmen love, love, love widows. They've got money to spend. Walter was new to the car game. He had been a Marine, and he'd been recently discharged and new to the area, moved to the Independence area with his wife, Patricia. It was said he could charm the pants off anyone and very frequently did. Morality was often an encumbrance to progress for Walter, so he actively avoided it. Sharon happily shelled out $3,200 cash for a bright blue T-Bird that Walter had in stock. Their first date was 2 days later. They typically went out in Kansas City so as to be far from Independence as possible, so prying eyes wouldn't see them. Or Walter would simply come over to Sharon's house. It was clear from the get-go they had very high libidos and were, quote, into a variety of deviant activities, unquote. Walter got transferred.
The 1960 Ford libido.
Walter got transfers to a dealership in Independence to make seeing Sharon easier. I mean, Independence is a suburb of Kansas City. Like, how close do you
Okay.
have to be? Whatever. I mean, pretty much. It's very close. But nevertheless, he gets transferred because he wants to be closer to Sharon. Sharon is still working at the camera shop, and she asks one of her coworkers there to buy her a new 22 caliber handgun, just like the one she lost, which she does. He registers it in his name, not hers.
Oh,
On May 15th, 1960, Sharon and Walter check into a motel for the night. Mind you, this is 2 months since she murdered her husband.
oh. Hmm.
2 months later. Sharon and Walter get into kind of an argument about taking some time off and going on a trip. Walter wants to stay in town and make some money. Sharon's kind of belittling him a little bit, and the fact that he's married to Patricia and their money issues. He can make decent money, and he's making commissions, and so his income varies basically on how much he works. But Patricia has a salary in her role. She works for the IRS, so
Oh.
he has to make more money. But in essence, Sharon offers to pay Walter to take the trip with her. Whenever they get together, she slips him $100 because she's flush. And but says to him basically, you can't afford to go with me because I'll just cover your income. I'll take care of you since you're taking care of me, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink. So she's just the most aggressively sexual woman maybe ever. Walter, even in spite this, insists, no, I can't go. I'm going to piss my wife off. I can't leave. I simply can't do it. Okay. Sharon passes her kids off to James's parents, even though she loathes them, but she has no choice. And she asks her brother to join her on a road trip up to Washington State. With her brother in the car, with Eugene in the car, she shows off the new handgun she has in the car. On May 24th, Eugene and Sharon return. Sharon is eagerly wanting some time alone with Walter, but he's working the new job that he's secured in Independence, and he's feeling he's under the gun. He's feeling some pressure. He kind of leveraged some relationships to get the transfer, and he is feeling like he needs to be diligent. He's having a hard time getting away. And if he's honest, by now he's kind of sick of her. It's fun, but she's crazy, and so he's just trying to find some way to end it, and for her just to go away. Okay, and he's a little bit embarrassed that he's allowed himself to be so controlled and steered and manipulated by this woman. Nevertheless, he relents a little bit. He goes and meets with Sharon for a rendezvous, but couldn't stay all night. He's sort of intentionally being an asshole just in case, if me being an asshole will cause you to be angry and break up with me, that makes it easier for me. So I've been there before. Uh, and so, they have the rendezvous, and Walter announces that he's not staying the night. So it's late at night, and he's prepping to leave. And Sharon says, "Oh yeah, by the way, I have some news for you. I'm pregnant."
Oh, okay.
Sharon's position now is great. So you can leave that hopeless bitch Patricia you're married to, and you can divorce her, and you can marry me, and it'll all be perfect. But Walter fires back. In essence, how do you even know that it's mine? I mean,
Ooh.
there is no we. I don't know what you were doing when you were off in Washington State. Uh, I'm married to someone else. I mean, for all I know, you're fucking someone every single night, and actually, she is. Not every night maybe, but she's well traveled.
I'm guessing she
Uh,
took that well.
yeah. So I wrote here in my script, Sharon, being a crazy person, is livid at this accusation. She goes completely off the hook. Walter decides it's time to get out of there. It's time to scoot. He leaves the hotel in a flurry of profanities and threats from a naked woman who is completely unhinged and chasing him to his car. The next day,
The 1960 Ford Flurry, when you have to escape the worst relationship you've ever been
all the worst features of her car. The next day, Sharon calls the IRS
Of course she does.
and asks for Patricia Jones.
Of course she does.
Gets her on the phone and explains to Patricia, you know what? I've got some vital information about the affair your husband is having with my sister, she says.
Your husband's going to be a daddy.
Patricia is shocked and she wants details, but Sharon refuses to give any over the phone and wants to meet.
Oh no.
Sharon directs Patricia to meet her at an antique shop at the corner of Highway 24 and Liberty Street. Patricia agrees and heads that way. She finds a strange woman sitting in the front seat of a DeSoto. They talk through the window briefly, and then Patricia slides in next to her. The woman tells her, I know your husband is with his mistress, my sister, right now. I know where they like to go. I know where they go to park. I mean, he's literally screwing her right now. So
Oh my God.
we need to go catch them right now. Patricia is like, this is weird and stressful, and she doesn't know what to do, but reluctantly agrees to go. Sharon tells her it's not that far away, and they pull away in the DeSoto. Minutes later, they're pulling down an isolated country road. They reach the destination, but Walter is not there. Won't be long now, Sharon claims. They both climb out of the car. Sharon then pulls back a scarf and reveals that she has a gun. The first bullet hits Patricia in the neck, striking her clavicle, going through her lung and resting against her spine, paralyzing her. She twists as she falls down. The second bullet fragments on impact and hits her heart and both lungs. Blood is pouring out of her, and she is dead in minutes.
Oh my God.
Sharon wants Walter Jones to herself, and there's nothing that's going to get in her way. And that's the end of part one.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Bryan. Bryan, we do not do true crime on this show.
With this again, that's the disclaimer. This is not a true crime podcast, but I found this story, and it's a good one.
What? I just did. Okay, I'll wait. That's that's astonishing, bro. I've never heard of this case. This is unless you're doing a real well, me and hiding what it's about. I've never heard of this case.
No, real true story, real true crime story. I came across it probably a year ago, and I've been holding it. And then I got the. I was trying to find. It's based on a book called titled "I'm Just an Ordinary Girl," the Sharon Kinney story. By I believe the author's name is James May or James Hay. I forget which. Was trying to find a hard copy of the book. Couldn't find it. Couldn't find it. Couldn't find it. Then realized it was available on Kindle. So
Oh,
downloaded the Kindle book and have been reading that. So there's part one.
Ryan, thank
So
you very much.
yeah,
That's I think this is the first time we've both had a
yeah,
two-parter at the same
weird,
time. So
weird. Yeah, as a disclaimer, we used to be very clear about this when we do these do these episodes. We don't know what the other person's bringing, so it's always a bit of a surprise. So first time we're doing two parters on top of each other.
all right. Well, that is awesome. Thank you, Bryan. Appreciate that. That's a good one. And you get to finish up first next time because it's episode 151, so we can find out the fate of Sharon Kinney.
Yeah,
She
and
sounds
I'm hoping this is only a two-parter. But part two is fucking crazy.
all right.
There's a lot there's a lot to it. I need to figure out how much to
I'm
include.
I'm actually kind of in the same boat. Mine it might
Okay.
end up being a three-parter as well. So we might be this might be a
Hmm.
Dream Idiots first.
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Thanks for listening,
Yep.
folks.
Absolutely. Check out Dream Idiots if you can. Like, share, subscribe, give us a review if you don't mind. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. If you want to shoot us a story idea, you can actually go to dreamidiots.com, click on contact. You can drop us a line. Those messages actually go to Morris now, not me. And so you can do that. And thanks for tagging along. And we appreciate you listening to our insanity.
Yes, and I have a request of listeners. If you would like to send in stories or different restaurants that are in competition with one another, please let me know because I'm fascinated with the subject now. And I've got one, maybe two more planned in A Tale of Two
The
Restaurants.
restaurants.
So if there's a local establishment that really hates another local establishment, they serve the same dish, let me know because I will do a story on it. All right. Thanks, folks. Be good to each other.
Bye.